Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to just picture a machine for a second. Not a car engine or anything like that, but a psychological machine.
Okay.
A mechanism that's designed to take a human being and just systematically dismantle them, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but ruin.
That is a terrifying way to start.
It is, isn't it? But that's basically what we're looking at today. We are diving into Macbeth, but maybe not the version you remember from high school. We're using the lens of A.C. Bradley's lectures on Shakespearean tragedy. And I have to say, going through Bradley's notes, I realized I've been reading this play wrong for years. It completely challenges the standard definition of tragedy.
It really does. Bradley forces us to, strip away all the supernatural bells and whistles and actually look at the engine under the hood. He argues that what we call tragedy in real life, a plane crash, a sudden illness.
A lightning strike.
Right. That isn't tragedy in the Shakespearean sense at all.
Which feels a little counterintuitive. I mean, if a safe falls out of a window and crushes me, that feels pretty tragic to my family and me.
Oh, it's definitely sad. It's painful. But Bradley would classify that as misfortune. It's something that happens to you. It comes from the outside. He compares it to the story of Job from the Bible.
Ah, okay.
Job loses everything, his family, his wealth, his health, but it's all inflicted on him. He didn't cause it.
So for it to be a true tragedy, I have to be the one pushing the safe out the window onto myself.
In a way, yes. Bradley's core idea is that tragedy is a story of human action. It's an exceptional calamity, sure, but that calamity has to be produced by the deeds of the hero.
This brings up that old phrase, character is destiny. But I have to push back a bit. I mean, in Macbeth, you have literal witches. You have prophecies. These are external forces, right? Isn't it a bit unfair to say his character is the only thing driving this?
That's the argument everyone makes. It's the devil made me do it defense. But Bradley is very firm on this point. He says, character is destiny is maybe an exaggeration, but it captures the vital truth. The tragedy is action issuing from character.
But the witches literally tell him he's going to be a king. That puts the idea in his head.
But does it? Or was that idea already there? Bradley's point is that when the witches speak to Macbeth, they aren't planting a seed in empty soil. They're watering a weed that's already growing.
You mean he was already thinking about killing the king before he even met them?
Well, the text suggests his ambition was already a huge part of him. The witches just act as a catalyst. They confirm these inward movements that are already there. Think about it. They tell him he'll be king. They never say how. They never say, go home and stab Duncan in his sleep.
That's true. He makes that leap himself immediately.
Right. Precisely. The witches appear to Banquo, too. And he doesn't jump to murder. Macbeth does, because murder was already, a possibility within his character. The supernatural doesn't force his hand. It just gives a shape to his own dark thoughts.
So they're basically just an echo chamber for his subconscious.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, fine. I'll grant you the witches. But what about the abnormal mind? Bradley mentions madness as one of these subordinate elements. Macbeth sees a floating dagger. Lady Macbeth is sleepwalking. Surely, if you're hallucinating, you're not fully responsible, right? That sounds like an insanity plea.
It would be if the madness caused the crime. But Bradley makes this crucial distinction that just changes everything. He says these abnormal states are never the origin of the deeds. They are the result.
Walk me through that.
Okay, take the dagger speech. Is this a dagger which I see before me? Macbeth isn't killing Duncan because he sees a dagger leading him there. He sees the dagger because he has already decided, with his rational mind, to commit the murder. The hallucination is the pressure valve of his guilt and his imagination popping off after he's already made the choice.
So the madness is a symptom, not a cause.
It's the psychological machine starting to break down. But the machine was switched on by a sane man.
It really feels like Bradley is just closing every single exit door that Macbeth could use to escape the blame.
That is exactly what he's doing. He wants us to see that the hero is the author of their own disaster. And nowhere is that more fascinating than in the dynamic between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth.
The ultimate power couple.
And maybe the most interesting psychological pairing in all of literature. Bradley points out that the very structure of the play mirrors their relationship. The first half is this incredibly rapid ascent to the murder, mostly driven by her.
Right.
And the second half is this slow, grinding downward spiral where they just drift apart.
Let's talk about that first half, because Lady Macbeth, she comes off as the monster. She's the one praying to be unsexed. She's the one bullying Macbeth into it. She seems to have no conscience at all.
She certainly seems that way. And Bradley calls her this commanding, awe-inspiring figure. But he asks a really specific question. Why is she so strong? Is it because she has no conscience? Or is it because she has an incredible force of will?
Is there really a difference? I mean, if you can suppress your conscience so completely, don't you effectively lack one?
The difference is in the cost. If she were a true psychopath, she would kill Duncan, sleep soundly, and enjoy being queen. But she doesn't, does she? Bradley argues her strength comes from a lack of imagination.
Lack of imagination. That sounds like an insult you'd give a bad poet, not a tragic villain.
But in this context, it's about how she sees reality. Look at Macbeth. He is paralyzed by his imagination. He thinks about the murder and sees angels trumpet-tongued. He sees the blood staining all of Great Neptune's ocean. He sees all the moral consequences.
Then Lady Macbeth just sees.
Facts. Practical, tangible facts. Duncan is an old man. Blood is a liquid. You kill the man, you wash off the liquid, problem solved. A little water clears us of this deed.
She treats killing the king like spilling a glass of wine on the carpet.
She really does. She thinks that if she can just manage the logistics, the internal fallout won't exist. She cannot imagine what guilt will feel like. She thinks she can just slam the door on her own humanity through sheer willpower.
But you can't hold that door shut forever.
No, and that's why she breaks. Bradley points to the fainting scene as the real turning point. It's right after the murder is discovered. Macbeth is improvising. He kills the guards to cover their tracks. And when Lady Macbeth hears that, she faints.
I always just assumed she was faking it, creating a distraction to get him out of there.
That's the common reading, yeah. But Bradley argues it's real. It's the first moment her repressed humanity breaks through. She realizes this isn't a one-and-done kind of deal. It's a cascade. She didn't sign up for a massacre. She signed up for a neat little coup.
And after that, she just kind of fades away.
She completely crumbles. And look at the specific detail of her downfall. She becomes terrified of the dark. The woman who begged the thick night to cover her deeds now needs a light by her continually. She can't be alone with her own mind.
It goes right back to the imagination thing. Hers was dormant, but once it woke up, it just consumed her.
And it leads to the sleepwalking. Out, damn spot. She finds out that no, a little water does not clear them of this deed. And she dies, probably by suicide, all because she underestimated her own soul.
There's a strange irony there. She thought Macbeth was weak, too full of the milk of human kindness. But his weakness, his imagination, was actually his moral warning system.
A warning system she told him to ignore, and this is something Bradley points out that I find so moving in a way. Despite all her monstrosity, there's a kind of perverse nobility to her.
Nobility? She helped murder a king.
She did, but look at her as a wife. Bradley says she never once blames Macbeth, even when he's completely ruining everything, shutting her out, screaming at ghosts at a dinner party. She never says, "I told you so." She protects him to the very end.
That is actually heartbreaking.
Yeah.
She gives up her soul for him, and when it all goes wrong, she just accepts it.
It reminds you that even monsters are human. Which brings us to the character who is usually seen as the total opposite of a monster. The good guy, Banquo.
Okay, hang on. You can't come for Banquo. He's the moral compass of the whole play. He's the one who refuses to play the witch's game. Macbeth kills him specifically because he's so noble.
It's a comforting thought, isn't it? We need someone to root for. But Bradley takes a magnifying glass to the text, and what he finds about Banquo is deeply unsettling. He says Banquo isn't innocent, he's complicit.
How can he be complicit? He's a victim. Macbeth has him killed.
Being a victim doesn't make you innocent. Look at the evidence. Banquo hears the prophecy too. He knows Macbeth was promised the crown, but he also knows his children were promised to be kings.
Thou shalt get kings, though thou be none.
Right. Okay, so now look at the night of the murder. Banquo can't sleep. He's nervous. He actually prays to merciful powers to restrain the cursed thoughts that come to him at night. Why does an innocent man need to pray against cursed thoughts?
I guess I always thought he was just sensing the evil in the castle.
Bradley suggests he's being tempted, same as Macbeth. He's fighting his own ambition. But here's the real smoking gun. After the murder, Banquo knows. He says to himself, talking about Macbeth, "I fear thou playedest most foully for it."
So he knows.
He knows he's a powerful lord. He could go to the others, raise the alarm, start an investigation. But he doesn't. He says nothing.
Why? Is he just scared of Macbeth?
Bradley says no. He's not scared. He's calculating. He stays silent because if the witches were right about Macbeth, well, maybe they'll be right about his own sons becoming kings.
Oh, wow. That is dark. So he's basically letting Macbeth get away with it, betting that the crime will eventually pay off for his own family line.
He makes a quiet deal in his own heart. He won't help Macbeth, but he won't stop him either, Because Macbeth's success validates his own future. He's trying to keep his hands clean while standing in the middle of the crime scene.
That completely changes his death scene. It's not just a random tragedy anymore. It's almost karma.
It's what Bradley calls the incalculability of evil. Once you let it into the system, the machine we started with, it corrupts everything. It corrupts the doer, Macbeth, the enabler, Lady Macbeth, and the bystander, Banquo. Nobody gets out clean.
The whole play feels designed to suffocate you. And speaking of the design, what about the other characters? Because outside of those three, everyone else feels a bit cardboard.
You mean like Ross and Angus and Lennox?
Yeah. They're interchangeable. I honestly can't tell them apart most of the time. They just walk on, deliver some bad news, and walk off.
Yeah.
Is that just Shakespeare getting lazy?
Bradley argues it's intentional. He calls it grandeur in simplicity. Unlike a sprawling play like King Lear, Macbeth is meant to be a concentrated study of fear. And to do that, you have to keep the background blurry.
So the lack of detail is a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. Bradley links this to the style of Senecan tragedy.
The Roman playwright, right? What's
Yeah.
that style about?
Seneca's plays were usually really bloody, very rhetorical, and they isolated the main character to ramp up the psychological pressure. By stripping away the personalities of the minor characters, Shakespeare puts this massive, intense spotlight on the hero. We're not distracted by Ross's family drama. We are trapped inside Macbeth's head.
It creates that claustrophobic feeling. It's just us and the murderer.
But there's a danger in that. If you spend 2 hours locked in a room with a monster, you can go numb. You stop caring. So you need what Bradley calls the relief of pathos. You need to feel something human again to remember what's at stake.
And I'm guessing that's where the Macduff family comes in.
Specifically, the scene with Lady Macduff and her young son. Directors often cut it because it doesn't really advance the plot. They're all dead by the end of it. But Bradley thinks it's one of the most essential scenes in the play.
It's pretty much the only time we see a normal family just talking, right?
It is. The boy is smart. He's brave. When the murderer comes in, the kid yells, "Thou liest, thou shag-haired villain." He stands up to evil. It's this one tiny flicker of light in all that darkness.
And then it's immediately snuffed out.
But the snuffing out matters. It opens the springs of love and tears in the audience. It reminds us that real, innocent people are dying. It resets our emotional state so that when Macbeth finally dies, we don't just feel relief, we feel the full, crushing weight of the tragedy.
It's amazing how consistent that machine is. Every single part, the hallucinations, Banquo's silence, the faceless messengers, that brave kid, it all serves to show the complete destruction of a soul.
That's the genius of it. Macbeth isn't just a ghost story. It's a profound study of consequences. Not just the consequence of getting caught, but the consequence of the act itself.
Yeah.
The second Macbeth kills Duncan, he breaks his own reality. He can't isolate the deed. The ripple effect destroys everyone, himself included.
It goes right back to the beginning. The tragedy isn't the bad luck, it's the choice.
And the fact that you can't undo it, what's done cannot be undone.
That's a heavy thought to end on. And it leads to a pretty uncomfortable question for all of us, I think. We talked a lot about Banquo, the guy who stood by and did nothing because he thought he might get something out of it.
The good man who stayed silent.
Right. So here's the thought to leave you with. We all like to think we're not Macbeth. We're not going to murder our way to the top. But if character is destiny, how often are we Banquo?
That's the real question.
How often do we see something wrong, something foul, and we just stay silent? Because speaking up is inconvenient, or because maybe, just maybe, there's a tiny part of us that thinks the outcome might work in our favor? Where is that line between being an innocent bystander and an accomplice?
That's a question that requires a lot more than a deep dive to answer. That requires a look in the mirror.
I think we'll leave it there. Thank you for taking the plunge with us into the mind of Macbeth.
See you next time.